Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we are going to be chatting about several topics, including the disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party. That is a form available on Zip Forms that you will need to use from time to time. And what it looks like, I'm going to share my screen real quick. It's very simple. That way I can just give you a quick look. It is just a form indicating who you are working for. So it simply says the undersigned, unrepresented party do hereby acknowledge disclosure that the agent associated with blank firm represents either the seller or the buyer with regards to the following property address. And then the unrepresented party signs this. Now, times when you would need to use this. This is what you're going to use if you, as a buyer's agent, are representing a buyer on a for sale by owner purchase. So if your buyer sends you the address of something that isn't on the MLS, you may want to check Zillow to see if it's listed as a for sale by owner. And if it is, then you can call that seller and say, hi, I've got a buyer who's very interested in your home. I wondered if you might be interested in working with a realtor. I don't want to list your house. I simply want to bring my interested buyer in to see if this might be the perfect home for them. And if it is, would you be willing to pay a commission or allow a commission to be built into the purchase price? Now, depending on what they answer, they may say, you know what, we are tired of trying to sell this house ourselves. Would you come over and tell us what it's worth? Well, now you're going to have to refer them out to a listing agent, or how I would handle that is I would say, how about this? Would you let me have my buyer come for a visit? And let's see if the buyer would like to buy this house. If the buyer does not want to buy this house, if this house does not quite work for them, then I would love the opportunity to come in and have a listing appointment with you and take a look at your house and let you know what I think it's worth. Okay. That way I don't have to give away that potential listing because I have a buyer who may or may not want to buy the house. So I would probably run down the avenue of, let's see if it works for my buyer first. And if it doesn't, then I will pivot and go into a listing presentation mode with that seller. But if my buyer does want to purchase the home, I have to disclose who I'm working for. And I need written confirmation from the unrepresented party, which is the seller, that they understand that I am working for the buyer, not them. Because you can understand, if I'm selling a for sale by owner as a buyer's agent, I will probably still be doing some tasks for the seller because they don't have an agent. So if I am providing the residential property disclosure form and the lead-based paint disclosure form and the residential septic system disclosure form to the seller because they don't have those forms, then I would never want them to misinterpret that as me working for them. So by signing the disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party, they are in writing confirming that they understand that I will only be working for the buyer. Now, let's change gears and figure out another reason we might want to use this form. Let's say I have a listing and a buyer calls me on my yard sign and says, you know what? My aunt grew up in that house. I know it like the back of my hand. I'd like to buy it. Okay, well, are you working with a realtor? No. Okay. I highly recommend you have a realtor of your own. I represent the seller, so I will not be representing you because I don't do dual agency. However, I have, a company full of incredibly professional expert agents at my disposal. May I recommend one to you? Nope, we don't want a realtor. We even know what we want to offer. Okay. So if the buyer has decided that they want to purchase that home unrepresented, then the disclosure of brokerage relationship of an unrepresented party is going to need to be executed by that buyer, indicating that they fully understand that you work for the seller and you will not be working for them. Because again, you're going to find yourself doing what we call ministerial acts for the buyers. You're going to be they're kind of like administrative acts. You know, you're going to be providing them the documents. You're going to be perhaps even sending it to them via DocuSign so that they can sign it. You're going to be perhaps arranging access for all of their inspectors, possibly even meeting them there to allow access for the inspectors. You would never want that to be construed as you working for the buyer. So by executing the disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party, you're making it very clear that you are only working for the seller in this instance. Does that make sense? Okay, I know, I can run on at the mouth about something, but let's take this example. You're at an open house and you're working the open house, and a buyer comes in and says, hey, we're working with ABC Realtor at ABC Realty. Okay, great. Have a look around. If you have any questions, let me know. Well, this buyer, this customer, begins asking a lot of questions about the house, including, hey, we noticed that the ceramic tile is all broken up in the bathroom. Would your seller be willing to fix that? So at this point, I'm about to have a substantive conversation about a specific property with this buyer. But it does not trigger for me to have to do this form with them because they have representation. They have a buyer's agent. So it does not, in that case, I do not have to execute a disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party. Had they told me they're not working with anyone, at that point, if I'm going to answer that question, that's more than what you can find on the public record about that house. If I'm going to answer that question, then I would need to execute a disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party if they do not have a realtor working with them. But since this buyer told me that they're working with ABC Realtor at ABC Realty Company, I do not have to do this because they are not an unrepresented party. They have representation. Does that make sense? Okay, so when I go to open houses, I take a couple of these forms with me because you never know when the conversation is going to turn too far. Back when they first changed the law stating that you had to have these signed ASAP, I was using them as my sign-in sheets. But they have decided to really reinforce and reiterate that it's when you have a substantive conversation about the specific property. Telling them how many bedrooms, bathrooms, whether it's central cooling or not, those are not, in my opinion, substantive conversations. Now, whether the seller will pay closing costs, that's a substantive conversation, okay? So anything you can find on the MLS sheet or on public records, I would not categorize that as a substantive conversation, okay? Of course, obviously, there will be exceptions to that generality that I'm making there, but that's probably a good rule of thumb for you. Okay, any questions about that form? When to use it? How to use it? Okay, last thing. It is a brokerage relationship. So this is a required document we need to have. So please make sure you are sending us buyer's agreements and disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party. When you execute those, you need to send them to us. So send them to wainwrightco@gmail.com so that we can keep them on file, okay? All right, we're gonna move on to practicing law without a license. I know, scary stuff. I have this question at least once a month when agents call me and say, Ashley, my cousin / neighbor / preacher / volleyball teammate already knows who wants to buy their house and they just need me to write up the contract. Can we do that? Correct, Samantha. No, we cannot do that. And let me go into why. Because a lot of times it seems like a very easy way to make $500, right? Well, unless you are representing one of the parties, you may not use these documents. If you use these documents that we have, or any documents even ones you find on the internet, for someone who is not yourself. Like, you can go on the internet and find your own legal documents and do your own thing if you're going to buy a car or, buy a horse, whatever. But if you're doing it for someone that you are not one of the parties, then you are practicing law without a license, okay? What gives us the right to use these documents is when we are representing one of the parties. Otherwise, you may not engage in those activities, okay? Even if you're doing it for free, okay? So don't do it for the family when a cousin wants to buy the grandma's house, okay? Without exception, what I tell the agent who asked me that is, you know what? You can represent one of the parties. So I want you to fully represent one of the parties. I don't care which one. Fully represent one of them and discount your commission down to where you're comfortable, okay? If you've already satisfied your annual commission with us, discount that wherever you want it to be, but charge something and fully represent one of the parties. Now, if you are related to any of the parties, that should be the party you're choosing to represent, because it will be very difficult in a court of law to say, well, I was representing the buyer who I didn't know to buy my dad's house, but I didn't represent my dad. I was doing the best for the buyer. Well, that's going to be hard to prove that you weren't looking out for your dad's best interest as well, even subconsciously. So always represent the relative if there's a relative in the situation, okay, or the kinfolk. So do not, under any circumstances, use these documents outside of fully representing one of the parties, okay? So if you are representing one of the parties and you're drawing up all these documents for them and you're fully representing one of the parties, guess what you need to use for the other party? You've got to use the disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party, okay? And that does need to go on page 1 of the purchase agreement under addenda. So there are a lot of blank lines there. You're going to X the box and you're going to write in disclosure of brokerage relationship for an unrepresented party, okay? So never, ever, ever work a real estate transaction where you are representing none of the parties, okay? Again, you do not have the right to use these forms unless you are one of the agents, okay? And never, ever just hand out our forms. They are copyrighted. You will get in trouble. They will be able to figure out who gave them away because your name is on the bottom. So please do not give out any of our forms. Again, that could be construed as you practicing law without a license because you are providing them legal documents, okay? So if a lawsuit were to come out of that later, you could find yourself in trouble. So only use these forms when we are practicing real estate as one of the agents, okay? And again, y'all know my position on dual agency. I'll go into it again. I am willing to hear you out about why you should be able to do dual agency, but be prepared to answer my question, which is, did you represent both of these parties 2 weeks ago? If you can say yes, you already are a dual agent. And so I will have you continue forward as a dual agent. If you say, no, a buyer called me this morning about my listing, you have no business representing that buyer. You do not have an existing relationship with that buyer, and you do not need to be representing them, okay? It is rampant in our industry for agents to decide with their wallet rather than decide with their good sense. The good sense is you didn't represent both of these. Pass it off to another agent, ask for a referral fee, and give that seller and that buyer the best representation they can, which is their own representation. I will tell you, I have done dual agency in the past. It probably will happen again sometime in my career. In all those cases, I already represented both parties when it just so happened that they liked each other's property, okay? I will also tell you that in all 3 of those cases, I was very clear with my clients that I all of a sudden now were not going to be able to give them the full service I was able to give them the day before, because you can't. I cannot be as of much service to them when I am representing both parties. I now cannot give my professional opinion to either of them as to an offer price, negotiations, what repairs to ask for, whether to take the repair remediation limit or not, whether to offer the repair remediation limit or not. Okay. What I say is, you now are making twice the commission for giving half of the service. Okay. And that's not fair to anybody except your bank account. So I am really pretty firm about that. It's also the most common way real estate agents get sued. And I don't know about y'all, but I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I'm too old to find another career choice, you know? So let's move on to, well, let me open it up. Any questions about any of that? Any questions about friends wanting you just to, you know, write it up for them? That's all they have to do. And that every time an agent calls me, that's what they say. Oh, I just have to write it up. They already know everything they want to do. Well, that's still going to be a no from me. Any questions on that at all? Okay. Y'all are good students. You're just going to do what I say. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go into a tool that I'm bringing to you guys. This is not my tool. I found it on one of my many sources online that I scour and look for good stuff. So I have loaded it. I don't know if you probably have not had a chance yet to check your email that I sent you last night. Yes, I know I had a typo. It was very late at night when I was doing it. So I corrected the typo, but not until after I'd already sent it out to all 133 of you. And Jennifer, you know her, she immediately screenshot it and sent it to me and said, typo. And I said, I know. So anyway, the email last night was a link or several links to a shared Google Drive that we're making available to you guys. On it are all of our training manuals in PDF form. All of our training videos are there in the shared Google Drive. You don't even have to go to YouTube to watch them. You can go right to the Google Drive, and I've got them all separated into separate videos, and you can watch whatever you want to watch. In fact, I'm loving it because last night an agent emailed me and asked me if I had access to all of the email addresses on our VAR on MLS so that she could send out a flyer. And I said, you know what? I don't have a current list, but here's a link to the YouTube video where I tell you how to do it. And so I just sent her that link, and she's able to watch the YouTube video now and learn how to download those email addresses herself. So I'm loving that I'm able to very easily access those resources and send them to you guys at your request. So I also have some additional folders in there with some fun stuff. Let me share my screen again, and I'm going to show you our tool for today, which is a daily call tracker. So you may know that prospecting is a huge part of what you need to be doing to make sure that you are generating leads and generating more business. Prospecting can also be a very deliberate attempt to stay in touch with past clients. So prospecting can be for new business, but it also can be for making sure that you're staying in front of past clients, okay? Or potentially old leads that never turned into anything that you're hoping to revive. So this is a daily call tracker that you can use. What a lot of agents will do is they will print out multiple copies and bind them into a book so that they have a journal and they can just, you know, have a month in that book, and their goal is to fill that book in a month. Okay. So it's setting your appointment goals, set a starting time that you're going to begin making phone calls. So if you're going to start making phone calls at 9 a.m., set that as an appointment on your calendar, and then start calling. And you're going to register how many calls you make and how many actual conversations come out of those phone calls. And you're going to try to set appointments with every one of those phone calls, even if it's leaving a voicemail. Okay. And at the end of the day, You're going to take a picture of the page. This is for accountability, and send it to your accountability partner. So if and I'm happy to be that person for you. If you just need to know that someone is going to look at your pages, I am delighted to do that. So is Donna. So is Jennifer. If you want to pick one of us, it will work better if you pick another agent at the firm and you guys decide to be each other's accountability partner, where you're going to be sending these logs to each other just to check in with each other. And here is how you're going to be tracking your phone calls. Time started, time ended. What are your appointment goals for the day? So if I'm going to be making phone calls for 2 hours straight, that's all I'm going to be doing is making phone calls. What is my appointment goal for that? Perhaps I want 2 appointments. Listen, 2 is not an insane number of appointments to try to meet, right? This does not necessarily have to be appointments for going out and showing houses or going out and listing a house. This can also be, I'd like to have coffee and just talk to you about your house, since you indicated to me that in the next year or so, you may be interested in selling, right? Donna had a perfect example of reaching out to a past client just to wish them well on the birth of their twins, only to find out that their house was getting a little squeezy. So she has now put their house on the market and sold their house for them, and will potentially be buying them another one in the next few months, helping them buy another one in the next 2 months. That's because she was doing her calling. So by reaching out, she was able to convert that past client into a current client. So put your appointment goals on here. You can list your outreach attempts, how many times you're trying to get in touch with people. Conversations, how many conversations did you have? And then what appointments did you make? And list them here, put them down. And here are notes. You can put in notes about what came up during that conversation. Perhaps you're going to have this one page for one specific client that you got on the phone and you got chatting with. In the notes section, you might say something like, having surgery next week, or kids having a big birthday party this weekend, or, whatever. I just went to one of my past clients' their son had a drive-by birthday parade. So I loaded my 8-year-olds in the car and we went for the birthday parade. It took 10 minutes out of my day and it meant the world to them. We did throw a Lego kit out of the sunroof. It's a weird world we're living in now. And that meant the world to them. Ultimately, they put it on Facebook and thanked me. But I have a genuine relationship with my clients. We go through a lot to close on these houses, and I want to maintain those relationships. So put down here the notes that you may come up with while you're on the phone with them, and then scan these in, organize them in a certain way. This is just a call tracker that formalizes what you should be doing already. And sometimes for me, when I get a cool toy like this tracker, it makes me more likely to actually do what I know I'm supposed to be doing. So this is attached to the email that I sent you last night. And it also, I'll continue to share my screen for one more moment. It also is on this Google Drive that we are sharing with you now. Let me get to it. Bear with me one moment. Pay no attention to behind the curtain here. There's a lot of steps to get where I need to be, but you guys just have a link to go where you need to be. Almost there. So when you guys go here, there's forms and spreadsheets. Here is the copy of the daily call tracker. You can print it anytime you want. If you lose it, it's right here. I also have the 60 daily points of rhythm. You guys have seen me share this before. I love this thing. This is from an agent in Texas who shared it with us after a convention I went to. This is a weekly tracker. You're trying to get to 60 points every day. And you get points for each of these things you do: writing offers, offers getting accepted, writing handwritten notes, 25 calls, 25 emails, attending a closing, having lunch with a sphere of influence person, a client or a lead. So this is another tracking device. So all of this is about you being accountable in your business to make sure you are using your time well and that you're doing the things that actually make you money. We can make our Facebook business page look pretty all day long. That is not going to bring you the business like making phone calls, like walking neighborhoods, like specifically emailing past clients and touching base with them. Okay. We all know this. And it's just sometimes it takes a reminder or a tool to get us back into the act of doing it. Okay, I'm going to open it up to new business or questions or input about anything we've discussed. I know today was a little bit of a fast class, but I appreciate everybody being here today. Anybody have any questions or new business? Okay, quick meeting today. If you wish, join us at 10 a.m. for some new agent training. I will tell you, it is going to be more brand new agent training. We are going through real estate lingo, and we're going to go through all sorts